couple of my students here in the class, in the meeting, people from my classes. So it's good to see you all. I've been painting with alcohol ink for about 6 years now, I believe, and I've been teaching it for about 4. And like Jackie said, I do other things too. I do encaustic wax, and I've done a little watercolor, and I do some acrylic and some mixed media type stuff. But alcohol ink, when I first ran across it, it just kind of stole my heart, and that's kind of where I've been since that time. Now I dabble in other things, but what you normally will see from me is the alcohol ink stuff because I teach it, and that's what I'm usually focused on. And things have changed a little bit over the years since I've taught my first class. We've realized that we can work on different surfaces with alcohol ink. When we first started with it, it was primarily used, well, way back in the day, alcohol ink was used for crafting, for card making and scrapbooking, things like that. And then more recently, it has become more of a fine art medium. And so you will see now alcohol ink being shown in galleries. And Susie, who's right there in your group, I know she's shown some of her beautiful work, her alcohol ink work in galleries, and she's selling quite a bit of it. And I have students that are doing the same thing. So it's a beautiful medium, and it works like nothing else I've ever run across before. It's kind of similar to watercolor in the way that you can make it move and look really fluid, but it's also can be reactivated by alcohol, and it can just the way that it works, the way the inks work together is really different than anything else I've ever used. And the look is kind of distinctive. When you see alcohol ink work, you kind of know that that's what it is. So I guess what I was saying before is that we used to think that alcohol ink only worked on non-porous surfaces. And so we would use it on synthetic paper and ceramic tile. And then we started experimenting more on porous surfaces and, how the inks maybe don't move as freely, but also how you can kind of make those surfaces a little more non-porous so that you can use alcohol ink. So today I'm going to be showing you alcohol ink on canvas. So I have a little small canvas here, and I'll bring my camera down in a second. And this is a 12 by 12 canvas, but I first wanted to tell you kind of how to prep your canvas if you are going to use it with alcohol ink. I use Kills 2, and this is just like a multi-purpose can of Kills 2, and I usually just use a little sponge brush to brush that onto my canvas. And the one that I'm using today, I've used this canvas before. I experimented on it, and so I put about 3 coats of this Kills 2 on it and let it dry in between, and I sanded between each coat. And I just do little light brushes of it, and I was kind of rushed for time because I actually was just drying it with my hair dryer between coats. And so you can do it pretty quickly if you're in a time crunch, which seems like I always am. So anyway, so I'm going to be working on this canvas, and you can work on canvas straight from your store, like a pre-gessoed canvas, but the ink is going to absorb a whole lot into the canvas, and it's going to take a lot more of the ink and a lot more alcohol or whatever you're using to move the ink. It's going to take a whole lot more of the materials, and it really moves a little differently too. So if you really want the best experience with the canvas, I would recommend prepping them with the Kills 2, and you can use gesso too. It'll do about the same thing. So if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and move my camera down and see if we can get this situated a bit here. Turn the light on. And I thought I would it might take it a minute to focus a little bit here, but I thought I would just kind of show you some different ways that you can move the ink on canvas, and hopefully you can see that okay. And I just, was just trying it out to make sure it was moving okay over here. So one of the ways you can move ink, and I don't know how many of you know anything about alcohol ink, but it is actually a dye. So it's not a pigment, it's more of a dye, and so it's transparent. And so one of the pretty things about alcohol ink is that you can, use layers, and because they're transparent, you can kind of get, some of that pretty layering where you can see colors underneath. And the inks do react with each other too. So if I put down another color next to one, I mean, they would kind of blend together and kind of do some special things. So I'll show you some of that. So one of the ways that I use alcohol ink is using, well, most of the time I blow my ink out. So you'll see some artists that paint with a brush. They'll put the alcohol ink in a palette, just like a little palette like this. And you can let the ink totally dry out. You can let it, all the alcohol evaporate from it. Then you can put some alcohol on a little brush and just use it like you would watercolor. But I typically use air to blow my inks, and I like to do a lot of flowers, and so I'm always, trying to create petals. So this little tool is like it's made by Ranger Inks. It's just called a little alcohol ink blower, and you just pump it with your hand and just releases a little bit of air. And you can also use like a camera lens cleaner. They make a similar type of little tool, but this one is a little bit easier on your hands if you're going to be using it a lot. You can use also just like a little small hair dryer, like this one puts out not a real strong burst of air, but a little bit, and it has a high, low, and cool setting on it. So I usually use like a low setting that has a little bit of heat to it. I'll show you a little bit of that. And then probably my favorite thing, and Susie and Ellen and Kay can, they can all tell you because they've been in my classes, and Jackie too. But I love this canned air. And it is a little bit tricky to work with. And I see Jackie shaking her head or nodding her head up there, but it can be a little bit tricky to work with. You really have to get the hang of it. But it creates the most beautiful petals that you'll ever see in that with alcohol ink. So, but it is a little bit tricky. And yeah, and I'm sure Ellen will tell you that she blows ink across the room with this stuff. So you have to be a little bit careful. That's probably how Jackie blew ink on her car in the garage. Was that what it was, Jackie?
It is, you're right.
Yes. It has a powerful burst of air, so you do have to be kind of careful with it. And when I teach classes, I kind of, give you some tips and some tricks to keep it from blowing all over the place. But it will do that. I mean, I've blown ink on my walls in my house too. So, um, it's part of the learning curve, I guess. So I'm going to start with using this little tool and just show you a little bit of how this works. And again, this canvas, I mean, it's been used many times. It's like my little practice canvas. And so it's got 3 coats of the Kills 2 on it, and it's pretty smooth now. And I can still see a little bit of what I did underneath some of the color, but I don't really mind that when I'm painting because that kind of becomes part of my underpainting. And I don't care if a little bit of those, the other paintings showing through. I don't really get caught up with that too much. So this ink is called Boysenberry. It's a really pretty purple. It's made by Ranger Inks. And that's what I used right here. Now, the color might show up a little bit differently on your screen, but this is a really beautiful, vibrant color. So if I were to put this down on a canvas that had not been primed, and let me bring it up so you can see. It's kind of moving a little bit, spreading out. If I were to put it down on a canvas that had not been primed, it would just sit there like a little bubble. It wouldn't spread at all. And so that's one of the things that helps with a primed canvas is you're going to get a little bit more movement with the ink. So I'm going to just use my little tool, just give that a little air there. And I hope you all can see that okay. Maybe you will when it starts to play around with it some. Now I'm using, this is just 91% alcohol that I put in a little bottle. And you can also use blending solution, which the ink companies make. It's like a pre-made blending solution. It comes in little bottles like this. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a scratchy throat today. And now this has a little bit of resin in it, so it becomes a little bit sticky sometimes if you're using it a lot. So alcohol does basically the same thing, except alcohol sometimes pulls a little bit of the color away. So if you want to keep the colors really true to what they are, then blending solution is your best bet for that if you want to keep them super vibrant. But a lot of times when I'm using alcohol ink, I like to kind of get a faded look and where the color kind of fades out to nothing. And so alcohol is really good for doing that. I'm just going to put some alcohol down along the edge of that color and then just use my tool to kind of blow that out some. And then I'm going to bring it up closer so you can see it. So you can see it just kind of faded away there. And I'll keep moving some of that ink out. I just put a big blob, big circle of alcohol down, and I'm just blowing, just pushing the ink outward. And so a lot of, alcohol ink artists love to see that kind of faded look, where we call it the fade, actually, where the ink just kind of fade away. Now see over here, I got a different look, and I'll show you, kind of how you can do that too. But here I just put the ink down, I let it kind of dry out, and then I'm just using my alcohol along the edge of it and just pushing some of that color away. I'll do a little bit more of that. And the more alcohol you put down, and the closer you get it inside of that little circle of color, the more of that color you'll be able to pull out. I know that the light's kind of maybe it might be a little bit too bright, but that's what I'm having to deal with today. And I usually turn my painting around as I'm working, so I kind of find a comfortable place to blow the air, and I stick with that, because if I start trying to move my arm around in different positions, I kind of lose, I think, some of that momentum that I have and the nice comfortable feel that I have. So you can see that, and I'll just do that kind of all the way around here. I just love these inks though. I mean, and the thing about alcohol ink, and it's probably true with a lot of mediums too, but you're never going to get the same two paintings with alcohol ink. They're all going to look different every time. And it's just the nature of the inks. You can't ever duplicate a painting. I've had people ask me to, for a commission, they'll say, I'd like to have a painting just like this one, but I'd like it to be in these other colors. And, you're never going to get something that works out exactly the same. It's just impossible. So you can see a little bit of that. So you can also put your ink down, and see that time over there, I let it dry. This time I'm going to go ahead and just leave it really wet and put some alcohol in it and just blow all the ink out like this. So it's going to look a little bit more vibrant, and here it's very faded and you get that really kind of wispy look. Over here, you're just going to get more of that deep concentration of color. And that was probably the same amount of ink that I used here. It was about the same, but over here I'm just not letting it dry first. I'm just going to go ahead and push it out. And so even when your ink dries, like over here, it's fairly dry, I can just add some more alcohol and just keep reactivating the ink and just pushing it out. So there's just so many different ways that you can use alcohol ink. You can get that really light wispy look. You can get the really bright, concentrated, deep colors. Some of that. And if I didn't like this area here, I could just add more alcohol over here along the edge of it and just change the shape of it. Jackie, are you all seeing me and hearing me okay?
We are. It looks fantastic.
Okay, thank you. So here's a little bit of that. Let me just show you a little bit of how I use the hair dryer. You can do the same thing. Let me just pull a different color so you can just see something a little different. This is a really pretty orange color. Excuse me 1 second. Pretty orange color is called Valencia. Put a little bit of that down. And I'm gonna put my hair dryer on the low setting, so it has a little bit of heat, but it'll, it's gonna, you're gonna hear a little bit of this noise, so hopefully you'll still be able to hear me. I'm gonna put some alcohol along the edge of that. So with this technique, you can really get some pretty abstract looks, and you can get, florals too, some pretty petals, but also you can get some beautiful abstract looking pieces just using the hair dryer and just letting it just kind of flow into the ink and just push it back and forth. I'm going to turn my bright light off for a second and see if that helps, but it might not be light enough. Let me just check it and see. I don't know. I don't know if that helps or not, but is that better or worse, Jackie?
I kind of liked it with the light on, but I'm not sure what everybody else thinks. Ellen, okay.
Then let me go with it just like this for a second, and we'll see if that. I don't know how well you can see the color when the light's on because it kind of washes it out.
I could see better with the light on.
With the light off or on?
On.
On?
Me too. On.
Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah. Now just bring it up so you can see. So you're getting some pretty, and you can, you can blend your colors together. I can put a little purple down here and try it a little bit and, add some depth in here maybe. I'm always thinking when I'm doing my florals that I like to add, some lighter colors and some darker colors together so that it creates a little bit of depth, adds more interest to the painting. But I don't know that I really have a favorite way to move the ink other than that canned air, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. That I think people either love it or they hate it. But once you get used to it, I think people really love the way that it works and the things you can do with it. See that, and you can just keep moving the ink and just bring your alcohol down between those colors and maybe blend some of those colors together a little bit. And I know Ellen and Kay have seen me do this 1,000 times already. You're probably kind of bored because you've seen me paint with alcohol so much. And Jackie, you too, probably, I'm sure. You've watched a lot of.
It amazes me every time.
What's that?
I said it amazes me every time.
Oh. And Susie's in my membership group, and so we paint together every month, and we try to do something different every month in that group. We'll either have a specific flower that we use as our inspiration, or maybe we're just trying a new technique in the month for a different way to move our inks, or color blending and color separation, and we have a lot of different things. Every once in a while we might do something with a brush or a tool, and I do use tools to create the centers of my flowers, but as far as my petals, I'm almost 99% of the time I'm using air to move the ink because I just like the kind of the free flow look of it. So I'm just continuing to add alcohol and pushing the inks back and forth. And one thing, you might not really see petals, when you're painting like this. You may just be going for a, like an abstract look. But if you're going for a flower and you're not really seeing the petals, once you start adding some detail in there and a center in it, it just kind of all comes together. And That's what I tell Ellen, because she made a flower the other night in our paint along, and she thought it was just crazy looking. But I told her if you put a center in there, then all of a sudden you're going to just see the flower emerge. But so lots of things you can do to make it kind of come together. Okay, let me bring that up. So there's let me get that. You can see it. So I've got some darker colors in here, and then I might go in there and create, you know, a little bit of a center in there, something to make it look more like a floral. So over here is where I just put the ink down with some alcohol and just pushed all the color out. Over here is that more wispy look where I let the ink dry first, and then I added the alcohol to blow it out. And now I want to show you the canned air. Let's see, let's put down, see what I've got over here. This is, I'm going to put down a little bit of this purple again. I'm kind of running out of space, but I may have to work with some of the ink I've already got down. I'm going to put a little bit of this turquoise down too. So I've got the boysenberry, the purple. I'm going to put some of this turquoise kind of around the edge of it. All right, so then this time I'm using the canned air. And so a couple of things about canned air, if you're going to try this, you never want to shake the can up because it's actually a gas on the inside. And if you shake it up, it's going to blow out fluid. So you never want to shake it up. And you want to try not to disturb that gas that's on the inside. You know, as best you can. I mean, you're going to have to be moving the can around a little bit, but if you can keep it kind of as still as possible, it's going to help it to not freeze up, because it will get really cold to your hand when you use it a lot. And another thing that helps that is if you use little short bursts of air when you're pumping the air out, if you just do little. So I'm just pulling the trigger just like this, just like little short bursts of air instead of a one long stream of air. So if you use those long streams of air, it's going to get so cold that you actually can have ice that freezes up on the outside, and it's almost impossible to hold it in your hand. And if I'm doing a large painting or I'm painting with it a long time, I'll usually have like sometimes 3 or 4 cans sitting out that I'm just switching back and forth between, because they will start to get cold. Even if you're doing everything right, they're still going to get cold eventually when you use them a lot. So, and another thing, when I'm painting with this, I'm getting really, really close to the surface. I want to get the straw almost touching the paper or the canvas, whatever I'm using. So if you're looking over here, I might even have the can kind of hanging over the side of the table so that I can get really close. I don't want to lean it over completely horizontal, because that's when the gas will kind of get too disturbed and it'll start blowing out fluid. So you want to keep it at least almost like a 45-degree angle so that it's not tilted over too much. So if that means you've got to hang it over the edge a little bit to keep it more upright, then that might be the best way to do it. So let me come back over here. So I'm just going to use my alcohol and just put some of that down in that ink, and just give it a little air. And I'm just using little short bursts of air. Now that color's not, because I let it dry, I think, so long before I started pushing it, it's not showing up a whole lot, but we'll keep pushing it, and I'll show you what it looks like. I'll come up a little bit closer so you can see. And I might put down something darker there too, so you can see it a little bit better on camera. Now in person I can see it fine, but I think on camera it's going to be a little bit harder to see. And I kind of go around the edges if I want to shape petals a little bit. Even right here, I could, you know, if I wanted to put down some alcohol where that's already dried, you know, I can still continue to move that ink. I could go back to this one and just keep pushing it and shaping it. kind of go around the edges sometimes and kind of shape my petals. Let's go ahead and blow this one all the way out since I've started on it. Now, my alcohol is running into this one that I did over here, and anytime that happens, it's gonna change this one. So if you're wanting to protect something, you might have to keep it covered, or you might have to be really careful about where you're moving your ink. This is just kind of a practice piece here, so I'm not worried too much about it. But if I was doing this painting, like a real piece that I wanted to do, I would want to, be really careful about where my alcohol is flowing so that I don't, ruin a piece that I've already worked on. And I'll bring this up closer so you can see it a little bit better. So these are the ones that are blown out, and you can just kind of see how the inks kind of flow. I just love the canned air. I love the look you can get with this, more so really than anything. This is one I did when I was just making sure my canvas was ready. This was probably a couple hours ago, and I can still go back into that and just keep moving that ink until you set the ink with some kind of sealant. You can just keep moving it. So this has been sitting around for, an hour or so, and I can just go back in it and change it up. Does anybody have any questions? No, nothing. This one kind of turned into a mess. I'm going to put down some black over here. This is just called pitch black. Put some pitch black right there, so it show up a little bit better on camera. This is a little micro makeup tool. People use these for eyelashes and applying makeup, and I think they're dental tools too. And I like to use these in my alcohol paintings because they're like little tiny brushes. They have like a little fuzzy end on them, and they're really great for detail. I'm just drying that a little bit. And this is just pitch black. The pitch black has, it has all the colors in it. So when you blow it out with alcohol, you're going to get some blue sometimes in there that shows up, and sometimes some pink. I want to get this a little bit dry before I start blowing it so you can kind of see how it looks when it's blown out. See how that black kind of looks. This black is really pretty, especially if you just let it completely dry and let all the alcohol evaporate from it and then go back and change it later. It's a really pretty, has some really pretty colors that pop out. Let me blow it out this way some. And I'm switching back and forth between cans now because they are starting to get a little bit cold. Let me bring it up so you can kind of see what some of these look like. Let's see. This one over here, I don't remember what I used for that, but again, you can just keep on. And the reason I love this canned air is because I can just get some really real I guess, definite petal shapes. Like sometimes with the little air blower, the hand tool, they're gonna look a little more abstract, and I like that look a lot. But I think with this canned air, you can really shape some pretty petals. All right, so then let's sorry about that. Let me blow this one a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how I go in and kind of create a center in there. Okay, so let me see which one I want to work on. Let me just do this little one here since it's the little faded flower. I'll show you what I do in the middle of these. I use Snow Cap, and this is a white alcohol ink. It's called a mixative, and this has a white pigment in it. So it, instead of being it's not like the regular alcohol inks. It's a little thicker, and this is opaque where the other alcohol inks are transparent. So you can add this white to your inks to make them look more opaque. I'll show you that too in just a second. So I'm just putting some of that in my palette, and I'm just going to use one of my little micro tools. And I'm going to go into that white and then just start putting some little dots in there. And this is where I can add some dimension in there, make it actually look like it's a little flower. And what I normally do is I think about my light source, and if I think about my light coming from this direction, and you all are artists, I mean, you know how this works. I'm trying to, emphasize that area where the light is coming from. And so I'll make it a little bit brighter over here. And then as I come down toward the bottom of the center, I'm making my dots a little bit smaller, and I'm leaving some of that darkness that can show through the background and add a little bit of depth in there. So just, it looks like that. And I've spent a lot of time on my centers. If I'm, I'll just go back and forth and add more brightness in areas. And sometimes I'll have to go in and add some depth to it by adding a darker color in there. There you go. And let me just show you how you can add Snow Cap directly on top of the ink to give it a more opaque look. So I could put this Snow Cap down, then add a little bit of alcohol to it. And it just kind of adds another layer. And since this top layer is a little bit more opaque, it just adds some more depth in there. And now this is putting down Snow Cap without any alcohol, so it's a little bit thicker. So I'll bring this up in a second, but I can put this white down, and then sometimes I'll use my straw to kind of create some little shapes in there, if you can see that. Do that again. So I just get the straw really close, and I just go in and create some, it looks like little folds. See that okay? Do that over here. Just all kinds of things you can do. And again, this is just putting the white down with no alcohol added to it. So it's just keeping it fairly thick, and it'll take a little while to dry because it ends up being more like a thinned out acrylic more so than alcohol ink. So it's not going to dry quick like the other, the alcohol ink dries really, really quickly, but this is going to be a little bit sticky for a while. All right, any questions? Anything else I can
Those-
show you?
Those are gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're unmuted now.
So, camera?
Oh, yeah.
I just want to know when you're going to have another class online again.
Well, my classes are ongoing. I have a membership that is, it's a monthly membership that you can join, and I put out a new tutorial every month, and then we paint together on Mondays, and we have some other things like a guest artist that comes in. So that membership has a new technique or tutorial every month. And then I have some online classes that are self-paced that are always open for enrollment. I'm planning to put out a new class on alcohol ink flowers probably early in the year that's going to replace my very first alcohol ink blooms class that I did about 4 years ago, because I'm going to retire that class and do a new one, because I think things have changed a whole lot. There have been some new substrates and new inks that have come out. And so there are things about that class that I want to, redo and make them more updated. But yeah, I'm always open to teaching Zoom classes too. If anybody ever wants one, let me know. And those are always fun. Anything else?
I think California is a good area to do alcohol ink. Others may disagree with me, but because the humidity is so low there, it makes them move a lot easier than when you're in someplace very humid.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's true because we do have that issue here. I'm in North Carolina, and so our summers get really hot, and a lot of humidity. And so you will see things happen with the inks that you wouldn't in places where there's low humidity. Yeah, you'll get some bubbling up and almost like water droplets that form on your paper. Yeah, that can be really annoying. So I'm sure that's true. So,
Kim, are you not using the compressor as much anymore?
yeah, I do use the compressor, but I don't use it, I think, as much as the other things. I don't know. I can show that to you but it's a little bit different.
No, I was just going to say another thing I do that I don't know if anybody else does, because my canned air, when it gets cold, I put those little koozies on it, and that helps too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember you saying that before. Yeah. Yeah, I just added a little something in that one. So yeah, you can do all kinds of things with alcohol ink. I guess this really didn't. I'm gonna have to put something on top of this because I made this flower going that way and this one going that way. So all kinds of things going here. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think Susie had one that she was going to bring to the meeting to show that I think she did on canvas. Did you bring that, Susie? Here she comes.
Come in. Am I on camera or?
Yes,
Yep,
you can see yourself.
there. Hi.
Beautiful.
That was the canvas yesterday, I think. And then, you guys remember my Raksha lines.
That's gorgeous. I love that one, Susie. Will you hold that back, or Jerry, will you focus on her?
Oh,
I can't change focus.
okay.
Never mind, that shows.
Can you turn around for us? Yes, I will. Cameras first.
Beautiful.
Okay, there we go. Uh-huh,
All right, I gotta catch up, sorry.
okay. There. And then back. Do this on top of the acrylic? No.
And you can do other, sometimes I'll do gold leaf on top, and I've got one, let's see, this one here. This is one that I did some gold mirror effects on. So if you can see that. So it's just, you can add things in with alcohol inks. It's not just like you're stuck with just using the one thing, but I don't know how well that's showing up, but so this is the gold leaf effect.
That's beautiful. And you guys, you can use stencils too.
Well, we use stencils in class sometimes. Yeah. Looking around to see. And I really love alcohol ink on black. I think that's my favorite.
There's only something. This will let me do.
So this is one that we did we worked on in the membership too. So I love, with alcohol ink on black, you have to put down your color and then some of the white on top of your color. You got to mix it in there somehow so that the ink shows up on black, because the ink is transparent. And so if you don't put down anything, it's just going to disappear into the black background. So you've got to use some kind of white in there. So that's one that we worked on. This is another one on black. So just a little small piece. So you just have to always remember to use your white in there. And just more of the ones we were doing in the group this month. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And yeah, you can use any synthetic paper is good, and UPO is one of the brands that a lot of people use, and then Nara makes a synthetic paper, but they're kind of like a plastic sort of material. And you could also use like a graphics craft plastic or a poster board. Anything that is non-porous works really well. Ceramic tile is a good one. This is one I did some time ago. Now this was on ceramic tile, and this has a resin coat on top of it. So it's people do a lot of resin on top of the alcohol ink too, but you always want to make sure that you seal it and set the ink before you pour resin on it, because otherwise it'll move the ink and change the whole look. So this one I just did a poured kind of abstract background and then painted this with, I painted this whole thing with one of these little tools right here. Let's see what else I painted on. You can paint on metal, but this is a big metal painting that I did. This is round. I don't know if you can see that because the camera's kind of, let me turn my camera back around for a second. So this is a big metal, it's like a pizza separator type thing. So you can definitely use alcohol ink on that. And you can use it on glass. I've done lots of alcohol ink on glass on wine bottles. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, lots of ornaments. We do alcohol ink on ornaments. The clear ones, you would have to paint the inside of them white and do your alcohol ink on the outside, or you can actually blow the ink on the inside of the ornaments. I do that sometimes, or you can just paint on the white glass ornaments. So there's tons of things you can do, lots of things. And I'm sure Ellen and Kay and Jackie and Susie can all tell you that we do a lot of experimenting.
I think you're only limited to your own creativity. It's your imagination.
Yes, yes. Yeah. All right. Anybody want to see anything else or got any questions for me? I know I had a little bit of time left, but I kind of blew through that pretty fast.
I don't know if anybody in the Zoom has any questions. If you do, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
And I'm unmuted just here.
Okay.
Okay, what about on gourds? I did paint on a gourd with alcohol ink. It came out really pretty, but I did have to coat it with gesso to get it to penetrate a little more. Is the gourd,
Yeah.
It didn't really work on the gourd.
Oh, it didn't work. Okay. I think you can use alcohol ink on almost anything as long as you prep the surface beforehand. And I think that's really important. And some things, I've even seen people prep, wood, like wood boards with something, and, probably the Kills too would work on that. But I have seen people do the gourds, and I think, yeah, but they're going to be probably a little bit too porous if you don't put something on beforehand.
Yeah, it did finally come out when I put the gesso on. And it remained bright, and I haven't sprayed it yet. So it's really bright.
Yeah, and the important thing about alcohol ink is that because it's a dye, it has more of a tendency to fade than some of your other mediums. And so you want to make sure that you seal it with some kind of UV protection if you're going to sell it, or put it in a gallery, or I pretty much seal everything that I do. So you want to first seal it with something that's going to set the ink, and or you So there are two ways you can do it. You can use a product called Kamar, Kamar, which sets the ink and it causes it to, you know, not react with other things that might come into contact with it. And then you can spray it with pretty much any kind of UV protectant, or you can use a product called Krylon UV Archival Spray. And that is, that will not
I didn't
react.
get any of that either. Wait, could you say that again?
Let me grab the,
Krylon UV.
Okay. That's it.
yeah, it looks like this. And so this varnish will not react with the ink. And so you can just use this one product and it's going to set the ink, seal it, and also protect it from UV rays. And I usually do at least 3, 4, 5 coats.
Right.
Yeah, it needs a lot of protection. And then you could do resin or whatever you wanted to. Once you set the ink, then you can do whatever you want to it. And you can even add another layer of, you know, if you wanted to do something else with your painting that's not going to react with, you know, if you wanted to do another layer of inks, you could set it first and then paint more on top of it and it won't react with what's underneath. So you have to make sure that your inks are set though, because anytime I put down alcohol now, I mean, I could sit this in over there for a year, and if I come back to it a year from now and add some alcohol to it or spritz it with alcohol, it's going to react with it. So it doesn't matter how long it sits there, it has to be set before it's really protected from, you know, anything with alcohol in it. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else in the audience have any questions, or shall we let her go for the day?
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and it was so good to see you all again. And thank you again for inviting me back. Enjoyed it last time too. And I did some classes with some of you before, and that was a lot of fun. So let me know if you ever want to do any more of those. I'm willing to do those, and those are always fun.
Maybe what I'll do is send out something afterwards and ask if anybody's interested. We can do another private one. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you, everybody. Thank you, Miss
Yeah.
Kim. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for
You're
joining
welcome.
us.
Thanks for
Bye.
letting us
Thanks,
do it.
everybody.